Assalamu alaikum everybody. This is a short video just to talk about the 4 stages of learning that people are often going through when they are experiencing change and they're growing in their lives. And it's a gradual process that is emerging as they are becoming more aware of the way they show up in the world. They relate to themselves, they relate to others, and they relate to the events in their life. And these 4 stages of learning are: number 1, unconscious incompetence. I don't know that I don't know that I don't know. Conscious incompetence, I suddenly become aware that I don't know. Conscious competence, I now know that I know. And then unconscious competence, I now don't really have to reflect on that I know, because it's just running in the background automatically, and my life's functioning now in that area of my life, and so I can focus on the next thing that I am unconsciously incompetent about. And an example I usually give of this is that, say someone sees someone driving and they say, I could do that. You're unconscious that you don't know. And then someone pulls up in a car and says, go on then, you said you could do this, let's see how you do. And so you get into the driver's seat, the other person gets into the passenger seat, and you start to try to operate the car, and you soon become very aware that you become conscious that you don't know. And a lot of times for people, they can end up surrendering to their negative internal dialogue. When they say, look, see, told you don't know, and you never know when you're useless. And so often people feel a lot of shame. They feel a lack of confidence to really engage. But often the way to actually move on in the next stage of learning is you simply engage. And so mistakes are not a problem. They don't reflect your incapacity to do this thing. They're just a step towards and part of the process of learning. And it's in the mistakes that we start to know where we need to go. So we realize, oh, it's not like that. Actually, maybe let's explore and be curious about whether it's this then. And once you can be open to that, you've got the wind behind your sails, and you move to the next stage, which is conscious competence, i.e. you now starting to get the hang of it. You know now how to operate it, but it's taking a lot of mental focus, and it can be quite tiring. And often the stage of learning is a back and forthness between conscious incompetence and conscious competence. So it's this process and journey of you go back and forward, and it can take time and it can be frustrating. And when you slip, you can often feel, I'm back where I was and I've forgotten everything that I was learning. But that's not possible, because now your feet are walking forward, and you're not in the same place you were before because you weren't even aware of it. And so there is no falling backwards, but often it can feel like that emotionally. And it's at that stage where we have to start asking ourselves questions, to reflect, to remind ourselves we are not where we were. And that can be, these are the 5 questions I often ask people. Is it as frequent the mistake? Or this could refer to anything. Could be referred to slipping back into bad habits or addictions. Is it as frequent? That's the first question. So if you look back 2 months ago, is it happening as often as it happened back then? Number 2, when it happens, is it as intense on a spectrum? Question number 3, how does it what's the duration? Does it last as long in that moment than it maybe did in the past, maybe 2 months ago? Question number 4, what tools do you have now? Because you probably didn't have tools available to you, or they were very limited before, and now the tools and the skills and the interventions that you have, you didn't have them back then, so you can't be in the same place as you were before. And then question 5, do you understand now why you're feeling the way you're feeling, or why you made the mistake? Can you backtrack and think, oh, I can see that I was feeling a bit tired then, and that's why I lashed out. And if I had just listened to myself and not actually taken a break, I might have been less reactive. And question number 6 is, how are you relating to it now? In the past, you might have said, for example, you might have just come down on yourself like a ton of bricks, but now you're more curious, you're encouraging, and more compassionate. Whilst before you weren't able to do that, you were just very hard on yourself. So that's really important. That's sort of a sub-theme here on the way to learning or change, is that it's really important when we feel that lull and that we're waning or we're falling back, to ask ourselves those questions. And usually we can realise actually there is a change, there is a difference. And so we're going back and forth between unconscious incompetence to conscious competence until we get to the 4th stage, and that is unconscious competence, where you are now just doing your driving and not even have to think about it. In fact, you can do other things when you're driving. Obviously not recommended, but theoretically you can do other things, and so you don't even have to have them at the forefront of your mind. Unlike when you first passed your driving test, you're really having to focus and don't speak to me, and you're having to you're in that still conscious competence phase, which is often when we're at school or at university or doing any exam. We only study to actually pass the exam, so we only get to that point of conscious competence, but we don't end up embodying it and moving to the 4th stage, which is unconscious competence, where it's there and we can access it any time. We might not in the moment be able to theoretically bring all the concepts to mind, but in the practice we can practice it and implement it. And that's true learning. And that's how change happens progressively. It's not through an algorithm of, okay, how do I control my anger? I do this and I get that result. No, it's through a relationship of relating through these 4 stages of learning, and through these 5 or 6 questions, asking ourselves when we do fall, and we look back at our footsteps, how far we've come, rather why are we not there yet at the actual goal, that we can then pick ourselves up and feel that motivation to continue on this journey that is never ending. And it's not perfection, it's progression that we're looking for. I hope that's helpful.